Peak Deshaun Watson or MVP Lamar Jackson? That is the question today, ladies and gentlemen. I have been waiting all week to make this video. I had a commenter, Kevin McKay, come out of nowhere on one of my videos and comment that I was a fool for saying that Lamar Jackson, MVP Lamar Jackson, was better than peak Deshaun Watson. Now, I love this kind of stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I love the conversation with all of you in the comments section. Most YouTubers, they won't even read the comments. I not only reply, but I will make a whole video on the comment. Okay, so I enjoyed the discussion. Thank you, Kevin, for this fantastic discussion. Please, ladies and gentlemen, always feel free to get involved in the comments. So here's my thesis. Here's the question. We're going to break it all down because I hate trying to explain everything in just like a comment box. My statement was that I thought people say, well, if Deshaun Watson is good, the Browns will be good. My argument was that the best version of Deshaun Watson, even if he gets to the best version we've ever seen of Deshaun Watson, it's still not as good as the best version of Lamar Jackson, and it's not as good as the best version of Joe Burrow. Arguably, we have yet to see the best version of Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. In the comments, people were saying that's not true. The best version of Deshaun was better than the best version of Lamar. So we will break it down. The commenters selected this season from Deshaun as his best season. All right, the year he threw for almost 5,000 yards in 2020. Okay. And then obviously I selected the MVP year, 2019, of Lamar. But let's look at the stats. Lamar played in 15 games. Deshaun played in 16 during those 2 years. Deshaun threw for 4,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and then ran for, in 2020, 444 yards and 3 touchdowns. All right. Lamar, in one less game, which is relevant, and he threw 401 attempts, and Deshaun had 544 attempts. So Lamar had one less game, and he had 150 less pass attempts, which is very relevant for this. Lamar had more touchdowns and less picks. So he had a better touchdown to interception ratio, which is kind of insane. Because if he plays another game and he throws for 150 more attempts, these numbers would be crazy. What I'm trying to say is if he had the same reps as Deshaun. So he's got more touchdowns than Deshaun, and he's got less interceptions than Deshaun. Then we go rushing. Lamar had 1,200 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. So he's got more passing touchdowns, less interceptions, more rushing yards, and more rushing touchdowns. The only thing Deshaun Watson did better in the 2 years is throw for more yards. That's it. Now let's go to the record. In that year, Deshaun was 4-12. Lamar, in his MVP year, the Ravens were 13-2. So not only did he win more games, he won over 3 times as many games. And now you'll say, hold the phone, James. This is the Houston Texans we're talking about. You can't compare wins. This is the Houston Texans. It's not Deshaun Watson's fault. To that, I say, the Houston Texans weren't bad leading up to that. The Houston Texans were coming off of an 11-5 season and a 10-5 season. So this is long before, or this is long after the bad version of the Houston Texans that you're talking about. Because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, well, the Texans are, kind of a dumpster fire, but this is 3 years in. This is after double-digit winning seasons. Obviously, teams get good and bad, no doubt about it. But this kind of drop-off for a quarterback, having arguably his best season, that does matter. Okay? Now, was the defense bad? Was all that stuff? Whatever. Sure. We can't factor in the defense and things like that. We can only factor in these stats right here. And if you really think about it, okay, you think about these 2 seasons, the only thing that Deshaun has are those yards, are those passing yards. That is it. Now, I want you to answer this question in the comments. Which season would you rather have? You can have one of these 2 seasons, quarterback A or quarterback B. Quarterback A can have 13 and what was it? 13 and 2? 13 and 2. Quarterback A, 13 and 2 record. More passing touchdowns, less interceptions, more rushing touchdowns, and more rushing yards. Or you can have quarterback B, and you can have a 4 and 12 record, but more passing yards. In what universe would you take quarterback B? Would you sacrifice 9 wins just to have more passing yards? I think it's pretty clear. And when I said it, when I made the claim, when I said best version of Lamar is better than Deshaun Watson, I didn't know it was this lopsided. I didn't know it was this severe. I mean, I know Deshaun is an interesting player because Deshaun was really, 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 really bad last year. Really bad. Awful. And people really hold on to this past version of Deshaun Watson. This past, prime version of Deshaun. And when you look at it, when I look at this, right, and let's take away 2020, because we've talked about that at length. Let's look at 2019. They're 10-5. He has 3,800 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. So if we look at, Lamar's years, what do we say it was? 3,800, 26, and 12. You look at these 26-9, 17-7. Obviously, the 16-13 isn't good. These are, if anything, you could say Lamar has shown some injury issues. You could certainly say that the last couple of years. But when both of them play, if you look at 2019 and 2020, when Lamar played 15 games, you look at these 3 years for Deshaun, I don't see how, unless you're just veiled in this nostalgia Texans of past. To me, it's pretty obvious that Lamar has lapped Deshaun Watson. And then if you factor in that Lamar is going to get better. Lamar is growing. Lamar is kind of still trying to peak in his career. I mean, he's 26 years old. And then you say that Deshaun has shown the opposite. He's shown that he's taken a lot of time off, obviously. He's dealing with off the field stuff. I understand he's still young. I mean, he's 27. But when you take that time off, after last year, we have to wonder if we've already seen his peak and if now he's dropping off. Obviously, if he comes in this year and he plays really well, we could say that maybe he was just knocking a lot of rust off. But I have a hard time believing that. I believe that when you take that much time off and you have those off-the-field issues like that, it's very difficult to find your peak again, to find the best version of you again. It's interesting that we're still hearing this. We're still hearing in the bigger sports media, we're still hearing that if only the Browns could find that peak Deshaun Watson. If the Browns could find the 4,800-yard Deshaun Watson that went 4-12, then what? And we haven't even obviously looked at Joe Burrow. But it kind of shows how underrated Lamar Jackson is. When you see that 2019 season, and I saw people saying, also in the comments. They were also saying he only threw for 3,100 yards. But the fact that he threw 36 touchdowns to 6 interceptions is somehow lost. And it also shows how much people weight that 5,000-yard number. Because I've heard people talk about Jameis Winston's 30 interception season, but they'll say, well, he threw for 5,000 yards. This 48-23, it means virtually nothing to me when it's coupled with that 4-12 record. Also, did you realize that Deshaun ran so little? Did you realize he was about on average, like a mid 300-yard rusher? Because I think people assume Deshaun is like this. You know, he's got legs. He can beat you on the ground. But that really wasn't the case. I mean, he's averaging 20-something yards a game for his career. So if you factor that in and you say he's not even really that much of a rushing threat, especially when you look at Lamar, like obviously Lamar is a much better threat, but 1,200 yards is nuts. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Insane. Down year, 700 yards. 700 yards in 12 games. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. I think it's pretty obvious that Lamar is better, has been better, and who the better quarterback is in the AFC North. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below. Where do you come down on this? Now that we broke it down, now that we do the comparison, what do you think? Am I wrong? Would you rather have peak Deshaun Watson or MVP? Oh, that's another point. So another point was the Ravens. The other point was that the Ravens, you know, they're this team that so consistent. There's this unbelievable dynasty. Of course Lamar was going to have success. Of course Lamar was going to have success because he played for the Ravens. But if you go, let's take a look at the Ravens season totals. All right, so just like how he did with the Texans coming off of back-to-back double-digit wins when Deshaun led them to a 4-12 record during his best year, LOL. This was not the Ravens that you're thinking of. All I heard was Lamar walked into a great situation. Not true. Lamar walked into, so he was drafted in 2018, right? He was drafted in 2018. He went 6-1 in 2018. The Ravens, 2018, were 10-6. So they were 6-1. So without Lamar, they were 4-5. So without Lamar, okay, so they go 5-11, 8-8, 9-7, and without him, they're 4-5. Then Lamar takes over. Lamar is the starter. Boom, 14-2. So he did not walk into a great situation. He did not walk into some winning dynasty. He walked into a pretty mediocre situation. He walked into 5-11, 8-8, 9-7, 4-5. And then, in his first 2 years, or we can do his first 3 years. Lamar's first 3 years with the Ravens, he rattles off, what is this, 30-7? Is my math right? 24, 30. Yeah, he goes 30-7 in his first 37 starts. 5-11, 8-8, 9-7, and then you rattle off 30-7. So to just say, oh, it was the team, it was the culture, it was the Ravens, I think is a bit unfair. Let me know in the comments below, ladies and gentlemen, did this change your opinion? Did this open your eyes a little bit? Or do you still think peak Deshaun Watson is better than MVP Lamar? Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.